Welcome, everyone, to this book talk, Writing into the Petri Dish of Burnout. We're here with author Laurie McGinley and their ghostwriter, MJ Halberstadt. I'm Melanie Adamson, CEO of Alder Co, a climate tech marketing agency, and I'm moderating this event because I introduced Laurie and MJ. Laurie needed a writer, but not just any writer, someone who would take the time to know them on a deep level, to coach, ghostwrite them through the end of their book. How many times have we said, I'm going to write a book one day? So, in this session, we're going to talk about how to find a ghostwriter, the elements of good partnership, and what Laurie overcame to publish their first ever book.
Hmm.
All right. So, Laurie, do you want to introduce yourself?
I do. And Mel, I'm really, really happy to be here with you. Thank you for agreeing to moderate this great matchmaker of ours. Um, I'm Laurie McGinley, and the way I would introduce myself at a conference is I'm super fucking magic. And that encompasses a lot of what I do. And for 2 years, I actually was someone who was trying to be a writer. And I spent 2 years knowing that a book needed to get out in the world because I met so many people who wanted to do the work that I do live, but just couldn't access it. And the way that I want to introduce myself today is I am somebody who guides people through massive transformations. And in order to get this book out in the world, I had to take hefty doses of my own medicine and overcome my beliefs about what it meant to write a book. And I can also happily say that I'm here as an author.
All right, MJ.
Yeah, you can. You are an author.
Wow.
Um, my name is MJ Halberstadt. I'm a ghostwriter and a book coach. I've always been a creative person and a creative writer ever since I was a child. Before I could even pick up a pen, my grandma was drawing the captions to the pictures that I was drawing, and I would dictate things to her. And my background is in theater and playwriting and teaching. And I've been on a journey for a while figuring out how to use my skills and my interests in order to positively impact the world. And the latest iteration of that is Find the Words, my book coaching and ghostwriting company that's currently just me, but I have ambitions of a whole big agency of folks. Um, Running into the Petri Dish of Burnout is the first full book that I've ghost written for somebody. I'm looking forward to doing it again. I work as a coach helping folks to develop their concepts for books. I love to empower people to really take charge of their own creative process. And I see myself as someone who fills in the gaps, provides structure when it's helpful, but ultimately I like to help people express themselves.
That sounds great. I love that. Well, let's get into some of the nitty gritty here, and I'm going to ask some questions and then hear what y'all have to say. But we're going to start with Lori. So let's just get one question out of the way. Why do you think most people don't talk about hiring a ghostwriter? And
I told,
oh, go
sorry.
ahead. Okay.
I was going to say, I told this to you on LinkedIn, MJ. I think that a lot of people think ghostwriting is like panty line. Like, we all want to wear underwear, but we're really self-conscious of it showing, which is ridiculous. I mean, if you want to wear underwear, which is how I look at this. And I think there's a little bit of shame in hiring a ghostwriter. I think there's a little bit of I'm going to be seen as less than. I'm going to be lying when I say I'm an author. I'm going to be lying when I say this is my book. And I think I don't want to make a super general statement about who writes books, but I think if you have the get up and go to write a book, you likely are somebody who has the get up and go to do things by yourself. And so the way that
Mm,
I see this is I definitely have that flavor in my life. I am absolutely the person who is like, no, give it to me. I'll do it. I'll carry it. It's fine. I'm strong. And so what I had to overcome and realize, and what I know now, if I could go back 3 years and talk to past Lori, is it's okay. It's nice to wear underwear. Don't worry about the lines showing. You don't have to be embarrassed of it. You don't have to try to hide it. You don't have to bend over backwards and buy all sorts of weird clothes so it doesn't show. Just own it.
So why are you proud of your choice to work with one?
Because I have an actual book. I
Mm,
literally would not have had a book. And unfortunately, I don't have one here to waggle at you because I'm not in my office today. But I love waggling it in front of people. I'm proud of my choice because the book got out of the little nooks and crannies of my heart and the recesses of my brain, and it's out in the world now doing what I dreamed that it would do.
mm,
I'm proud of my choice, Mel, because people who I don't know have bought it. People I've never talked to have bought it. People reach out to me and say, I'm reading your book. Thank you. And those are conversations I wouldn't have had to have otherwise. I'm also really proud of my choice because I talk to people about this all day long about doing things you're uncomfortable doing. You know this. I literally talk to people about this all day long, and I'm proud of my choice because this is one of the biggest things I've overcome is saying, I am not the person to do this alone. I am not the one who's going to do this without any help. And honestly, I'm really, really proud because I picked MJ and
mm.
not somebody else. Hair toss, MJ.
So MJ, why is it worth it to you to give so much time and energy to a book that doesn't have
Mhm.
your name on it?
Um, I I for a while was trying to figure out how to inject environmental themes into the plays that I was writing, and it didn't really mean anything because the people who are coming to see plays aren't necessarily the types of people who are gonna go home, be inspired, and become change makers. And I made the choice at a really early age to invest my adult life in creative pursuits. And I developed a bunch of skill sets. And then at a certain point, I turned around and I looked at the world and I was like, nothing I'm doing directly translates into positively impacting the world. And I felt this pang of like, I need to understand how renewable energy works. I need to become an activist. I need to figure out how to make EVs more accessible. And I had to stop myself and recognize I do have this skill set. It's not immediately apparent to me how I can help other people with that. And then I realized that people like Laurie, who have been committing their life to positively impacting the world, to influencing other people, to developing technologies and frameworks and methods of positively impacting the world, I have something that they have not been paying attention to in the way that I have. And so if I can give that to them, then in some ways I'm staving off my guilt of not being the change maker myself. I'm catalyzing the change that needs to happen, and that to me is a lot more rewarding than writing another sitcom that goes on stage that people find amusing for 2 hours and then figure out what food cart they want to go to afterwards. This feels much more worth my time and energy.
Yeah, it's great that you saw that everyone can play a role in
Mhm.
helping the transition of climate and climate tech, and and so, you know, I'm curious to know, like, once you all met, and yes, I'm proud to have introduced you both. What was the process like? I mean, I've spent time with you both. Love you each, but I just imagine that like it was so much fun. But tell me, what was the process like? A little grueling in some parts, maybe not.
MJ, I might have a different memory of our meeting than you do.
Okay, what's your memory?
No memory.
What?
I mean, I remember talking to you.
What?
I totally remember talking to you, but you said something as we were chatting the other day that I was like, I did what now? So what I remember, but I do have a memory, it's just a feeling. I just remember feeling relieved.
Hmm.
I had talked to other ghostwriters It probably about a year before we talked, I had started talking to ghostwriters, and I was always consistently underwhelmed by them.
Mm.
They felt fairly mechanical and processy, and I thought they're going to make a book that is going to be kind of a rubber stamp, but it has my name on it, and that doesn't feel quite right. And so I do remember feeling extremely relieved. It was like a huge letdown of discernment, frankly. And Mel, honestly, that had a lot to do with you because I love you too, and I trust your judgment. And I knew that if you liked MJ and trusted his judgment, then this probably was going to work. But beyond that, I don't remember the details of what we talked about.
I can fill some of those in.
Would you please? Thank you.
So we had a 20-minute discovery call. I was walking around Lone Fir Cemetery, and you talked a little bit about the book, and then you asked, how do I approach helping people express themselves? And I shared a little bit about how I think about the creative process and my share, shape, shift, shine framework, which is pretty loosey-goosey and is all about meeting people where they're at and designing a process that suits their particular creative style. And at the end of the 20-minute phone call, Laurie, you were like, okay, it's like, I want you to do it. And I was like, are you sure? Did I mention that I've never done this before? Did you catch that part? Because this is a big investment, and I think you trust me more than I do. And so what we did was I proposed doing a test chapter contract, which I now do with anyone who's interested to work on a book with me. And we limited our work to something like 3 weeks. And I wrote the intro chapter, or like a version of the intro chapter. And I looked at all of your notes and I put together a very rough outline that wasn't like, here's what the book is going to be, and more like, here's a test chapter if the book looks like this. And it was really important to me to get feedback from you, because once you started giving feedback, then the book started taking clearer and clearer shape. And we identified burnout as a helpful central theme that became like the center of gravity for the book and helped it become much more focused. And then it was just months of weekly meetings, interviews, filling in the gaps. I would bring Laurie pages. I would also keep some pages to myself for later because I didn't want to spend too much of Laurie's attention on things that I felt okay about or wasn't ready to get feedback on. We had a 1-week intensive visit when I came to Minneapolis in January. That was fun because I brought a hard copy of the manuscript and I read it out loud to Laurie over the course of 5 days.
Really
and
fun.
It was really fun. And we would pause and Laurie would elaborate about something, or I would ask a question, or they would say, oh, that's not quite true. Here's a better way of reflecting that. And from there, it was just like, I had a action plan from those notes, and that's pretty
So
much the book.
MJ, I'm having a little bit of awareness as you describe all of this. I'm experiencing something that I wasn't totally aware of before.
Ooh.
It was in that moment that I don't fully remember the thoughts, but I totally remember the feelings. This is why the book got out of my head. Because I surrendered into trust with you. And what you just expertly described is a process that actually works that I didn't have to think about. And I'm gonna make a metaphor that might be a little bit easier to explain what I'm feeling right now. I go to a gym where the coaches make a template ahead of time. All I have to do is show up and tie my shoes and listen to them approximately every 10 to 60 seconds to get the new instructions for that minute. And I love that gym because I don't have to plan. I don't have to think about it in the moment. When I'm breathing hard, I don't have to be creative. All I have to do is just listen and do. And in a way, what you brought to me is everything you just expertly described, I could just settle in. And it allowed me to be creative instead of like, oh, but the structure. Oh, but the little red squiggly line in Google Docs means I'm bad at spelling and typing. Like I could let go of all of that because you just took that on and it's what you like. And it's not what I like.
Mm.
Yeah, that is the great balance and the partnership. That is such a great story. So this is a question for both of you. So Laurie's book is mainly about the Enneagram, because that is some of the basis of your work. But MJ wasn't familiar with it when MJ, when you first started. So how did you manage the knowledge gap?
Well, one of the things I remember from this is when a new client starts with me, I send them a book, MJ, the book that I sent you. I sent you the exact same thing that I send to all of them. And I've had the experience with many, many dozens of people of them learning enough about it to be able to navigate. Now, the additional challenge that you had is I'm having them identify their number and just read about their number. You had to do 4. You had to do 4 that you are not. So you are not any of the numbers that I had you write about. And if you're not familiar with the Enneagram, what the heck I'm talking about is there's 9 numbers in this system that describe personality types. Covers 4 of them. MJ is a 5th type. So I knew that you could figure it out because I had the experience with dozens of people. And so I just did my process the same way I do my process. You took it on in a really different way.
Yeah, I approached it wanting to be the like researcher and dramaturg and to focus on the 4 personality types centered on that we centered on in the book. But it was very seductive to get sidetracked by paying attention to what I could learn about my personality. And so when we were talking about the different types, we would veer into different um, ways of talking about them, because sometimes what was helpful was for me to engage in the feeling of what it's like to be engaged like in the work of recognizing your personality type and how to interrupt those patterns. And so we would sometimes break away from the book so that I could do a bit of digesting and processing, which was helpful for me personally, but also helped me get into the perspective of a reader of the book who's being confronted by something that is both very empowering and a little nauseating. Having your soul reflected back to you is pretty intense. And it was actually very easy to craft the characters and narratives that pertain to each of the personality types compared to the work of imagining what it was like to be that personality type encountering the book. And that was another thing that I had to talk with Laurie about, like, what is actually going to get through the head of an 8 that is true, but also digestible to them. And what are they going to be able to actually hear in this part?
And if I may, MJ, I think that your particular gift and skill and practice in plays and theater really, really helped you do this quickly and extremely effectively. So from my side of this, I mean, the reason the book is about those 4 types is because that's the most common type who hires me. And so I've met lots of people in those types and had really intimate conversations with them, and can give you the perspective of what their life is like from my number. But what I saw you doing really in like you said, in a theatrical way is like imagining what it was like for Trip the 3 to learn this about himself.
Mm-hmm.
And express that in a way that would be true to another person who might identify with who he is and what's going on in his life and what his strengths and his challenges are. And
Mm-hmm.
and the Enneagram, I do know every time I send that book out, I know it's kind of gut wrenching because you're learning some kind of dark stuff about yourself. And I think you did it in a really beautiful way that made the characters really come to life.
Can you talk more about that example with Trip?
Yeah, I remember the coffee question moment. That's
Mm-hmm.
probably the one question that stands tall among all of the other ones. Is you this random question, I don't know if it was a text message or what you said. They were like, you said, what kind of coffee maker would Trip want? I think that was the question. And I was like, okay, Laurie, try not to answer this as yourself. And I actually chose one of the Enneagram 3s who I've worked with, and I sent her this question. And she sent back a very specific answer. Didn't even question why I was asking this, just sent back a very specific answer, which I sent to you. And then a short while later was like, what's that about? And it was that level of detail. And it was like, what kind of coffee maker would Trip have in his office where he sometimes sleeps because he's pulling late nights and early mornings, where it's probably not flashy, but it's utilitarian, it's efficient. It's you took the depth of the personality type to that level. You did it with Fiona too, about her ability or inability or disinterest in making eye contact. You took it to this very granular, very personal level that makes and I've read the book a couple of times. I'm actually reading it out loud and recording it on Substack. And so I'm getting this brand new experience of reading it out loud again. And I'm aware of all of these little subtle details that make those fictitious characters feel very real.
Yeah, I made a lot of swings. I think what happened with the coffee was I made a certain mental like calculus, and I made a guess, and I was like, okay, it's going to be like organic free trade coffee, best of the best available.
Nope.
And I think you flagged it, and you were like,
Nope.
I don't think that would be right. And we stayed on that subject for much longer than the reader would. Like, it's not a key to understanding any part of the chapter. It comes and goes. But once I was able to grok how someone like Trip thinks about coffee, then it became a little more intuitive, and I made a lot more guesses around similarly cosmetic character details, which honestly, I bet there's ones in there that you're a big fan of, Laurie, that I don't appreciate as much, because I was just like, I don't know, maybe he wears that kind of thing, or maybe those glasses are the right frame, or like whatever.
Yep. I remember you talking when you wrote in Fiona's color-coded pen system. Like that detail, it's just this detail that comes up in our first meeting, that she pulls this thing out of her bag and it's color-coded pens and a really clear organization system. We and Mel, you were one of the test readers. I sent the book before it was ready to 8 people, 2 of each Enneagram number. And the 2 Enneagram 5s who I had sent it to both were like, hell yes to the pen system. And so it was moments like that when I had an assumption about that, yes, that would be spot on, and then getting the feedback from you all of like, yep, that landed. Thank you. And I think you were right. There were a lot of lobs. There were a lot of like, does the spaghetti stick to the wall there? Nope. Okay, how about over here? And it made the process again of, I basically gave you a haystack of stories when you started. And it made the process of clarifying those really fun and delightful, because you weren't invested in the lobs. Like, you guided me through this really, really low stakes kind of fun game that would have been arduous and painful had I done it by myself.
I love that that readers can see themselves in the book, and that it's emotional. And, I think that's why you're probably getting so much great feedback, Laurie. And, ultimately it's going to be such a great help for people who are sort of stuck in their ways. So what's been the impact so far of having a book and having invested a ton of energy and time working with this amazing partner?
But the impact was immediate. I think the moment I held a copy, and it was a draft, it wasn't complete, but the moment I held a copy for the first time, it just felt like a huge relief. It happened to come in the mail on the day when I had an in-person speaking event in Minneapolis, and I got to bring it. And I wouldn't let anybody flip through the pages because it was a draft, but I had it in my hand. And what happened at that one event is like there was some sort of magical dust that settled that legitimized me that I hadn't felt yet at an event. Like there is something about it. It's in my book that I don't know if people listened better or that more people asked more interesting questions at the end of the talk. I don't know what it was, but something definitely happened. And since then, I had a little mini, totally international 10-day book tour in April. And I got a lot of incredible feedback because I had a physical thing. You know, here I'm talking about this for 15 to 60 minutes. You can take this home with you. And so there's a thing that's happened that people respond to me differently, or I perceive that they respond to me differently, but also these really beautiful things that people will get the books and reach out, and people have hired me because they got the book.
Oh,
That's happened. I don't think
Mm,
I've had a chance to tell you that, MJ. People have hired me because they got the book. And one of the most common things they say is, this is so well written.
mm,
And it's at that moment, I fully believe in honesty, frankly, because tracking lies is a headache. And so in that moment, I say, isn't it beautifully written? I hired the most incredible ghostwriter. He did such a great job. He's in the acknowledgments at the beginning. You can see his name there.
mm,
And that brings a variety of results. But the reality
mm,
is we're talking about what brought them there. The last thing that has happened, and I don't know if you saw this coming, I definitely did not see this coming. It
mm,
makes it really easy to organize talks.
mm,
And I know that the example at South by Southwest is an incredible one, that I got this 2 hour long workshop because it was easy to organize my thoughts in like 3 hours to give to the event organizer. And I gave it to a packed room and it was incredible. But because I'm talking about Olive and Trip and Fiona and Ison, we can talk about all of their shortcomings with great ease. Because I'm not talking to you about your shortcomings. I'm talking about
mhm,
Fiona. And we can see how hard she tries and we can see how beautiful she is and we can see all of her strengths. And it is so easy to see where she gets stuck, isn't it? And so people really open up because of the what is the genre that we called it? Fan nonfiction?
Oh,
If it's fan
fan nonfiction.
nonfiction, people really, really open up. So the organizing quality of it really supports people onboarding into the content. And then the fact that we're talking about these characters makes it easier for people to open up.
Mm.
that's beautiful. MJ, how has the book and meeting Laurie impacted you?
Um, First of all, I can't not acknowledge how big of an impact it's been to recognize my sixness. Now that I know my Enneagram type, I know what to pay attention to. And when I catch myself spiraling into like thinking, worrying, fantasizing, I get up and I say, make a choice, MJ. Make the wrong choice, but just make a choice and do something.
Oh my God, that's
Um,
delightful. Thank you for that gift. Wow, that was amazing.
so I feel like if that is the impact that the book has had on me on the level of being just a reader.
Mm.
And I do sometimes feel like just a reader of the book because I feel like all I did was organize Laurie's thoughts. I don't think I made up very much. Um, the other impact is that I mean when I met you, Melanie, I was really struggling to figure out how to fit into marketing, climate, values driven work. It was a hard period. I had worked for a couple startups and I kept getting into personality clashes with CEOs because they wanted me to be a copywriter and I knew that I had something to give and I wasn't able to help them. So recognizing that I have something that can be helpful in this context was really eye-opening and um, energizing, and that's why I'm excited to do that again. Um, and I think it was also it was clarifying for me that writing for a thought leader in climate doesn't necessarily mean having to write about scientific and technical phenomena. There's a whole other world of the interpersonal work that needs to happen in climate. And I feel like I'm one step closer to a niche. And I feel like it's an asymptotic curve. You get closer and closer and closer. There's no perfect niche, but Laurie is so gifted in that work, and I feel really glad to be able to contribute and amplify to the work that they're doing.
That's great. So, what's next, y'all?
So MJ gave me the writing bug. I'm working on book number 2. And because of the experience I had, I'm taking on in a format that is totally manageable for how my brain works. I don't have this idea of taking a giant bite out of it and doing the whole thing at once. I'm doing a mini book. It's a little guy. It's basically a collection of essays on a theme. It's a collection of LinkedIn posts on a theme. So one of the things you helped me do, MJ, is realize that I can get some of these thoughts out in a way that makes sense for how my brain works. And that has truly given me self-confidence that I wouldn't have had otherwise. The 2-year cycle of wanting a book and not having a book was just really deflating for self-esteem. And you helped me see all that goes into writing the kind of book that the Petri dish is. And it made it very apparent that 0 out of 10 do I want to do that by myself. No, you have all of these gifts and all of these skills, and I don't want any of it. So I got a little bit of the author bug.
That makes me so happy. I'm trying to spread that contagion. That's what's next for me. Um, I'm shopping around for my next full book contract and doing that whole discovery call thing. And I'm doing a lot of individual coaching that's now very focused on books, on self-help books in particular. I found that it's a genre that I like to write in because you can really lean into a person's personality. And in theater terms, it's a genre that breaks the fourth wall because you're addressing the reader directly, and that gets me going. So I'm seeing lots of clients who are developing books on a pretty wide range of topics, and I am hosting a write along program on Portland and in Zoom. Anyone who's interested can contact me directly. I'm keeping it pretty small, but we're using a workbook that I developed that aggregates a book concept into one sort of clear framework with a very flexible process for chipping away at it in just a couple hours a week.
That's brilliant. All right. Well, thank you all.
Mel, thank you for hosting. It was really fun to have this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Mel. It's an honor to be able to close the loop with you in this way. That's super cool.
It brings me so much joy to be here with you all both.
And just as an editorial